movie comment review, Viva, Cuba, from 2005. Brief information about the plot. It's described on the internet movie database as a tale akin to Romeo and Juliet. It's about a friendship between two children who have parents with radically different perspectives on life. Malu is from an upper class family, and her single mother doesn't want her to play with Giorgito, as she thinks his background coarse and commonplace. However, Giorgito's mother is a poor socialist and is proud of her family's social standing. She places similar restrictions on her son. What neither woman recognises the immense strength of the bond between Malu and Giorgito. And when the children learn that Malu's mother is planning to leave Cuba, they decide to travel to the other side of the island to find Malu's father and persuade him against signing the forms that would allow it. And this film garnered 2 nominations at the Mar del Plata Film Festival for Best Film in the international competition, and at the Monte Carlo Comedy Films Festival it was nominated for the jury prize for Best Film. It's directed by Juan Carlos Cremata Malberto and Hereda Malberto Cabrera, and I won't go through the cast, but there will be a slide. The film opens with a shot of the 2 children daubing paint on a banner and adding to that banner by adding Viva to Cuba. We then see the 2 children involved in a sort of playful game using guns. And we hear in the background gunfire, suggesting that this movie was made at the time of the Cuban Revolution. Certainly I suggest that there's going to be a political backdrop to this tale. The gunfire is just a sound that's added to create this illusion, but we see the 2 kids involved in imaginary play. They're enacting the conquest, the independence of Cuba from Spain, and taking on each side. The girl wants to be regarded as the Queen of Spain. The boy is trying to be a revolutionary. The children show their natural, playful attempts to control one another, and the boy is clearly unhappy at being always the secondary player in the exchange, the girl deciding the roles that they're going to play. We then hear both mothers calling for their children to return to their homes for food, one would guess. Thanks for that lovely piece of noise from outside. And they catch each other. Eye contact is made, and they're clearly not too enamoured with each other, coming from different social standings. And this sort of creates the backdrop that I was suggesting, perhaps with some historical link. Not quite sure when it's set, what time period, but I don't think it's the time of the revolution. Giorgito is somewhat of a tomboy, but we then witness scenes involving the mother and their child respectively, where the mothers are trying to impose their will on their children, to mix with their own crowd. Giorgito's mother wants her to play with girls, and she makes a point of pointing out that Malo's family are less well off, rather snobbish view. On the contrary, Malo's mother points out that to mix with those well-to-do folk is really not identifying with your social group, and so the markers are laid down by the mothers with respect to who they wish and want their children to mix with, to create a same view of the world. We get a glimpse into the educational system that's operational in Cuba. Of course, the communist Castro government is in power, and that's seen through priorities that it insists on being taught to children. We also see the children together sharing experiences, which is generating that friendship, that affection for each other, albeit in a competitive way. The girl considers herself to be of a slightly higher status than the boy, and this is echoed through how, whilst at home, she prioritizes learning, and we see that through the times table, which she is heard quoting. I'm very much identified with this in my school experience. But I like the ideas in this film, but it keeps it on a sort of comedic level, so we don't get too indoctrinated by the system that's existing for the two children as they grow up. It's kept light-hearted, although we capture early scenes where the mothers express their frustration at what's happening in their day-to-day life and how they're struggling to cope. The girl's mother is more concerned with status and is not happy that she hasn't the financial resources to match what she believes is her status. Conversely, Malu's mother is more concerned about the family appreciating what they've got and being grateful for that and respecting what's being offered by the communist regime. In terms of the plot development highlighted in the intro, we witnessed some powerful scenes involving the grandmother who dies. We're at the cemetery and the young girl is in tears. It's a Catholic family, so these ceremonies are pretty powerful on the impact on children, and we're aware that the mother has been talking about leaving the country, and the child looks round at all the faces there. the family, the friends, and you can sense that she's fearing being relocated, and all these support mechanisms from these people would disappear as she faces the possibility, well, or the probability of living in America. And I think the director draws out this point quite succinctly, really, about how children struggle with change. They're developing as young people, and they thrive on the familiarity of their neighborhood, their family, and their peers at school. And of course there's the issue about her friendship with the boy, and it appears that whilst all around her are showing grief at the situation at the graveside, she is also thinking about what lays ahead of her and how that could actually generate more sadness than what she's experiencing at the graveside. A very poignant scene where the two children share the feeling for their friendship, and the girl tells the boy about her mother's intention to take her away to the US, and she repeats her mother's message about you'll make friends easy over there, you'll have a better opportunity, you'll forget about what's going on here, the people here, you'll start fresh. And the girl hints that this is what she's been told, and the boy suggests that this could be the end of their friendship and that they'll never see each other again. And he then points out that she ought to go and see her father and see if he can stop this process happening. And they share the complications of travelling at their age, but he shows a strength and says we can do it, we can get onto it, and they agree to try. The boy seems to have some sense that the girl's father won't sign the authority to allow his daughter to travel to the United States. And it's all very, 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 very sad. On a social position, we are become aware really of how parents make decisions for their children based on what they think is beneficial to them, but really don't take into account at all how children feel about these decisions. They assume that they can cope easily with change and thrive on it, when in many cases change in this impressionable period of their life becomes a source of sadness and unhappiness. And I'm sure we as viewers to this film would identify on a number of occasions how our parents have made decisions for us that we haven't been totally sort of at ease with, and basically felt sort of a sense of loss. I remember moving house, and it was my mother's desire to be in what she perceived as a slightly favourable neighbourhood, and we had to go along with this. And although adjustment was handled, there were a number of people, number of friends that I lost touch with. I moved on because neighbourhoods tend to generate sort of companions for children. Travelling across the town at a young age back in the late 60s, early 60s and late 60s, was not exactly felt appropriate for young children, and so consequently one tended to seek out friends at school who lived close to where you lived, rather than continuing your friendships with others who were close by in your previous locality. In watching this movie and the two children's experiences at this age, it's easy to start to recall images in your own life at that age and beyond. The friendships that you made, the friendships that you lost when moving house, for example, the friendships that move through life and have an impact on you at that particular time, and perhaps further on in life. And I like the sense of realism that is portrayed in this plot. It's not flashy, it's not fantasy, it's reality that also gives you an insight as to the experience of growing up in communist Cuba at a time when the country was subject to sanctions, economic sanctions by the US for a generation, and you can get an insight as to how that would have impacted you in terms of your belief system, in terms of what you experienced at school, and how you saw the world. These types of movies are almost documentary to some extent, but essential viewing, really, if one's wanting to see cinema as a mirror image of life's realities, and giving you a glimpse of that reality in countries other than the one that you lived in. As the children prepare the following morning to venture out together in search of the girl's father, there's a beautiful sort of Cuban musical score, atypical of the fantastic music that comes out of that island, a music that I adore. That's an amusing observation of how kids can make things happen by breaking the law a little. Firstly, they they acquire money that their mothers have saved, the boy that is, but it appears not enough. As they get on the train, then the girl points out to the person who collects fares and asks for tickets that her mother's in the toilet, and then when they reach their destination, they make a quick dash for it out of the station, with the staff frantically trying to find them because they haven't paid. This sort of mischievous sort of behaviour I can identify with, possibly not at that age, but a little bit older, into teenage, where I acquired money that I selfishly wanted to use to spend on various sweets, and I stole it from my mother. And then also, as a teenager, I remember some of my friends started to develop this habit of stealing from shops to give extra cash to buy cannabis and music, and they used to steal. One in particular used to steal clothes and then try and flog them cheap to other friends in a coffee shop. I'm sure most of us have committed some sort of illegal, unlawful act in our time, even if it's just stealing some sweets from a sweet shop. But as we age, we wouldn't consider ourselves to be of a criminal intent whatsoever. And this conjures up images of how the state handles petty crimes, and how such issues as possession of cannabis, how ridiculous that this should be viewed by many countries around the world as against the law, unlawful, and this could lead to youngsters being placed on a track that leads to delinquency because of mixing with other more serious offenders. So lots of issues there, but in the context of this movie, it's seen as a rather amusing method of enable him to get to see the girl's father, who's a lighthouse keeper, would you believe it? Beliefs through upbringing. We get an illustration of that when the two children are sort of sleeping on the beach, and of course climate is very warm there, and they start to talk about belief systems. The boy's father has told him that God doesn't exist. He's very much an atheist, hooked into communist thinking, whereas the girl, of course, comes from a Catholic family, and she talks in terms of her grandma being up in heaven. The boy, somewhat sceptical about this, and it's once again poignant to see how belief systems emerge depending on your parents and their belief systems. You learn and tend to agree with what they share with you, what they say to you about this, that and the other. And it's certainly in contrast here. with the perception of the two choices, you know, a communist system versus a capitalist system, religious belief versus being an atheist. Interesting how these things are created in children through listening and believing in their parents. The director continues to want to introduce humour to the screenplay, which is welcome, really, to give it some sort of balance, and it does involve young children. Anyway, as they continue their journey, they're now on foot, and they start to get hungry and gravitate to a house of sorts right out in the sort of jungle area, and they spot a woman making some breakfast, I guess, bread and milk, and so the children decide they're going to perhaps relieve the woman of her food and drink, but she's aware of them being there, but they soon realise that she's blind, but she has a dog there to act as a sort of watchdog to frighten would-be thieves. But the scene is quite amusing, and eventually they make off with the food, but basically flee from the dog, leaving most of it behind. But it's a very amusing little scene. The latter part of the movie becomes more fantasy than reality, unfortunately, as the authorities, with the help of the two mothers, works out where they're going, and the tale towards the end gets a bit unbelievable, really, almost a children's fantasy, as the children are seen on TV with the girl singing at a school event in support of Chile, the politics being the same, and then we find the two of them out in the middle of nowhere, having fled because the boy senses that they could be seen because of her extravagance in singing. They then spot a tent because they're hungry, and they have a little difference of opinion about who should eat the cookies, and then the owner of the tent appears out of the blue and catches them. It all becomes very much a case of unbelievable, which is a shame. Or maybe that's what the director wanted. As always, with my observations and reviews, you need to watch the movie to find out how. As always, you'll have to watch the end yourselves. I'm not going to tell you here. Worth a visit, worth a couple of hours of your time.